So, in 1694, an Admiral Russell, admiral of the fleet in the Mediterranean, invited 5,000 sailors to a party. At the party, the drink of choice was a fountain filled with brandy wine punch. He filled the fountain, and the fountain was apparently so big that the bartenders had to paddle around the fountain in canoes as they brought drink to the thirsty sailors. According to one person, there was 250 gallons of brandy, 125 gallons of wine, 20 gallons of lime juice, and other things, all mixed together in this punch. And the punch was obviously shaken, stirred, and paddled. You're welcome. Only here at Emmanuel Church. But there was plenty for everyone. And that is a host's job. A host brings people into his home, prepares everything for them so that they can concentrate at the party, at the event, at whatever it might be, at what they're there to do. Be it a conference, be it a party where it's about spending time with each other. But that's what a host does. When God created the world, that is essentially what he did. He created a place for us to be, and he took care of everything. He created the world, he created the food, he told us how everything worked, he gave us everything so that we could just go and pick and eat, and everything was taken care of. That is the world that God created, and he created it as the host of this world. And then he gave us a job. And the job was, keep the party going. Continue to be the hosts. Care for the world. Make sure that things grow. Look after each other and look after the planet. And everything will be provided for. And trust in me as I dwell here on this earth with you. But then we chose to do it our way. We chose to do it the way that we thought was best, because we decided that we knew better. We wanted the knowledge of good and evil for ourselves. And as we did that, we almost immediately rejected this belief that God gave us, the belief that there is plenty for everyone. And we rejected it. And we became afraid as to whether God has our best interests at heart or not. And we became afraid. It's the first emotion after the fall. After Adam and Eve eat the plant, the first thing they experience is fear. And so we adopted a faith of scarcity. And in scarcity, straight away, we thought to ourselves, well then if there's not enough, or if it's going to be a battle between who gets what, I've got to be first. I've got to take care of, and here's everyone's favorite saying, I've got to take care of number one. I need to be number one. I need to have, and if I need to have, then the other person doesn't get sometimes. And that's just the way it is. And so we wanted more and more and more, and that has led to a human history of wanting more land, wanting more food, wanting more everything than other people, because we don't trust. We don't trust God to look out for us. We don't trust others to look out for us. And so relationship disappears. And notice, by the way, that the minute that happened, it says that Adam and Eve were taken out of the Garden of Eden because we were taken out of God's presence. But in God's world, he removed himself and left us in the world that he created. So he kicked us out of the Garden of Eden, but we essentially kicked him out to a certain extent from this world. because of the way that we behaved. So God's answer, as you guys know, is to choose Israel, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He chooses Israel, and he asks them to live in a counterculture. He asks them to live opposite to this way of scarcity. And he wants them to live in a form of generosity. He wants them to live in a way where they're caring for each other and that they're trusting God to provide. And he doesn't just say, this is what I want you to do, right? He actually gives them a way of doing it. And he takes them through all the way to the land of Israel. And as he does that, he provides water and he provides food. He gives them manna and he gives them water from a rock. He shows them that even in the desert and even in the wilderness, everything will be provided for them. But even with their bellies full and their camels watered, the people of Israel still don't trust. The people of Israel still don't trust. In Matthew chapter 10, what we've been seeing for a couple of weeks now, and we're finishing up here, is Jesus sending his people out. He sends them on this journey, almost like Israel, like many times the way he sends people on a journey and he says, guys, I need you to trust me as you're doing this. He wants them to see that whether bad stuff happens, that is, they get rejected in towns, or good stuff happens, they get accepted in towns, the goal is that they trust him. And so he says, don't take a bag, and don't take a second tunic, and don't take these things. I need you to trust me as I send you out, and I want you to do it the way I'm asking you to do it. And as you do that, I want you to do what a person does when they are hosted by someone, and what a host does when he invites someone in, which is, I want you to identify with me. I want you to represent me. Notice that when God created the world, he created us in his image. He created us, and it almost created the picture for hosting. And when you invite someone into your home, you are identifying with them. You're saying, we're together. That vulnerability, that openness. So he says, I want you to do that as you go to people's house. And remember that I am everyone's host. Trust me as you're doing it. We are called to trust him. And in these passages that we have in Matthew chapter 10, the trust is the trust of the traveler. Okay? The trust is the trust of one who goes out and trusts that God's going to provide on the way. God calls us, however, to trust in a different way, to be the trust of the host. To be, and this is the thing that we struggle with in the 21st century, we don't necessarily go out from place to place trusting that God's going to provide for us as we go there. We in our homes, as we invite people in hospitality, also have to trust. There is a fascinating lady I would recommend going onto YouTube and watching some of her videos. Her name is Rosaria Butterfield. She is a professor at Reformed Seminary in the United States, and she gives talks about hospitality. And there are two things that she says prevent Christian hospitality. The first one is hidden sin, and the second one is selfishness. Hidden sin. When people come into your home, when people come into your house, into your place, they see your life as it really is. You can't hide. When people spend time with you in your home, with your kids, or you in your life, in your place, they see you as you are. And for many of us as believers in Jesus, we are trapped in a theology that tells us, hang on a second, now I'm a Christian, now I'm clean. I'm supposed, God cleansed me, God changed my life, so now I'm good. And so I need, even though I know inside I'm not, I need everyone to think that I'm perfectly fine. And so we don't talk very much about the things that we're struggling with. And we don't we aren't open or transparent with people about what's really going on in our lives. And so to bring someone into my home might expose that thing that I'm hiding. People might see what's actually going on in my life. And so we don't invite people into our homes, or rarely invite people into our lives, because if they see, if they know, they'll know that we're struggling, and we'll feel that we're failed Christians. But we have to break that idea. Jesus did not come for the perfect. He didn't come for the righteous. He actually spent a lot of time trying to explain to the righteous how they got it wrong. And he tried to explain to the people, you're all broken. Trust me. Trust the Lord. Trust each other with what's really going on. Trust that he is going to be there for you. And so transparency, vulnerability, and your open home isn't a scary thing, because you're never alone. And even if people do judge you, you'll never be abandoned, because he's there. But yeah, being seen by others is a very scary thing. And because we hide ourselves, Christian hospitality is hard. The second is selfishness. And I can totally identify with this one the way that I can identify with the first one. But there are habits in my life that I like. I like doing things at certain time. I like my evenings to be able to do whatever I want. I like this time and that time in my life. I want my habits. And inviting people in means that I've got to give up my habits. I can't have this. For some of us, for me especially, okay, the beer brewer, yeah? What if God wants me to reach out to people who really shouldn't be around a lot of beer? Yeah? Do I need to give that up? Sometimes we need to give things up, and I actually find beer incredibly good for hospitality. Recommend it to everyone. But there are some people in this world that shouldn't be around beer. It's not good. And so God calls us to think deeply, to analyze ourselves and ask ourselves the question, do I need to give things up? Because bringing my neighbors into my house, bringing people who need a place to stay into my house, these things are more important. And so hidden sin and selfishness breaks that. And in our passage, Jesus is calling the people, his disciples, and he's asking them to think deeply about what they may need to give up. But he does it on a much deeper level than Rosaria Butterfield. She's telling us about our sin. She's talking to us about our selfishness. But here, Jesus says something else. When I came to faith, the first thought I had was, how is Adele going to hear what I'm going to say? Because I had to walk home from receiving Jesus to Adele. But the second one was, what is my mom going to say? And then what will my brother say? Jesus in this passage tells us he didn't come to make it easy and to bring peace and for everything to be okay and everyone will agree. In this passage, Jesus says, you have to know that father will turn against son, mother against daughter, daughter-in-law against mother-in-law, but I think that's easier to understand. If Jesus brings peace between daughter-in-law and mother-in-law, I think everyone comes to faith. Okay. But what will the family say? And I've spoken about this before, and some of you may not have heard this, but the reason he calls us to be ready to hate our family members isn't because Jesus wants to break the Torah, where we're actually called to love people. What he's doing is he's bringing us back to a different story, beyond Exodus into Genesis. He's bringing us back to the story of Jacob and his wives, Leah and Rachel. And there in Genesis, we are told that Jacob loved Rachel and hated Leah. Now, that passage isn't telling us that Jacob actually hated Leah. What it's saying is that Jacob loved Rachel so much that his emotion towards Leah looked like hatred. And what Jesus is asking us from, and what he is telling us to do, is that you have to love God so much that your love for others looks like hatred. That it is, in comparison, so much less. That's the trust and the love he calls us to have. He's calling us to love him the way that Jacob loved Rachel. But God has done so much more for us than Rachel ever did for Jacob. Actually, Rachel just caused Jacob headaches. He has done so much more for us and cared so much more for us. And he's asking us, and we have to ask ourselves the question, am I ready to change my life? Am I ready to give up my comfort and my habits? Do I really believe that God is the host? Do I believe that he really is there taking care of all of my needs? Do I believe he's going to be there at work? Do I believe that he's going to be there with my friendships, with my family? Is he really going to be there? Is he going to comfort me? When I'm at home, alone, at night, worrying, in my bed, tossing this way and tossing that way. Is he going to be there, and is he going to speak to me? Do we believe he will be? Or do we think we should take it for ourselves? At the very end of the passage, God says this: whoever receives me, receives you, receives me. And whoever receives me, receives him who sent me. And then he gives a 3-line story. The one who receives a prophet because he is a prophet will receive a prophet's reward. And the one who receives a righteous person because he is a righteous person will receive a righteous person's reward. In a 3-line story, the first 2 lines are just context. Okay? So it's about reward and it's about the person. Right? And here we've had 2 important people, the prophet and the righteous man. But the 3rd line's the killer. The 3rd line is the punch. And this is what he says: and whoever gives one of these little ones, these children, even a cup of cold water because he is a disciple, truly I say to you, he will by no means lose his reward. So God goes from prophet and righteous man to a child. Now, I'm not talking about a child in the modern state of Israel. Children in the modern state of Israel are just one step above God. Okay? They are the most important things in the entire world. These days, in the Second Temple, they were there at the bottom of the importance level. Right there at the bottom. And then he says, if you take this child and you give him a cup of cold water. So a cup, the smallest carrying thing that you have in your house, right? Water, the easiest thing for you to give anybody. And cold. I loved the cold. The cold for me was like the final, make it the least. I can't even be bothered to light a fire to heat this thing up. Okay? That is the cup of cold water. For us here in Tel Aviv, a cup of cold water sounds amazing, right? But back then, it's even if you give the least thing with the least amount of effort to the least person, you will receive your reward. Even if you give the least amount. Now, obviously, this hyperbole is there to move us. Even when you do the least, you're not going to lose your reward. Because this is what I want you to learn to do. I want you to learn to give and to trust. I want you to walk with me, knowing that you're walking in my house. That's the call that he's giving to us. But if you're like me, and God's calling me to do many things, it's not easy. It's hard. But then, as I read a story this morning, a little devotional. And in the devotional, it says that there's two ways to motivate people. Number one, you can motivate people by fear. Anyone seen that in a news channel lately? You can motivate people by fear, by scaring them about this and scaring them about that to get them to do the thing that you want them to do. But that doesn't work for very long. And 5 minutes walking down a street in Tel Aviv, you can tell nobody is afraid. But then there's the way you can motivate people and can actually see real transformation in their life. And that's the way the New Testament does it, by motivating people with heaven. Paul, again and again in his letters, brings us back to Jesus. And when I come to Jesus, I don't see selfishness. I don't see hidden sin. I see how he received people and how he gave to people, and how God, through Jesus, didn't only see us reject his generosity and live a life of scarcity, live a life of caring for number one and hurting each other, but I see God in all of that behavior never giving up on me and still sending his son to give everything in order to change my heart. And so when I come and I see him, I change. I change. Not a lot, not a massive amount, but maybe a cup of cold water amount. I begin to change. And slowly, cup by cup by cup, I think God moves us and changes us. So brothers and sisters, as always, look to Jesus and try one more cup each day, each week. And with him, we can care for, love, host, be hospitable, and work towards changing this world that so desperately, desperately needs it. Amen.